Absolutely. We had our general yesterday evening.
Yesterday evening.
We are now on light cues and a little bit of polishing, and then after the interview I will start the rehearsal.
It's 5 hours 20 minutes, but we just need 15, so don't worry. And we asked you to suggest a topic, and you suggested to talk about working structures and what impact they have on artistic creativity, and of course your creativity in particularly. If you don't mind, maybe we can start ex negativo. So what kind of obstacles, what kind of working structures are working against the freedom of creativity, if you like?
Well, I wanted actually to speak more about how we as artists also have to look into finding our own structures that are really appropriate to our needs. So not like saying this is not what I want, but saying this is what I want because this is what I need. And like when I look back at the starting of the company, we celebrate now 25 years of the company this year.
Congratulations.
I think it's thank you. It's not only the artistic language and vision that I think have made it possible that we are still here in this presence, but also that we were really fighting for our own spaces and our own structures, and not also being satisfied once you are invited into an existing structure, into a funded structure.
Institution also.
Yeah, so let's say if you speak about, let's say like what is not right, I think first let's look at it positively. And there were different important stations in my career. And like the first was in Berlin in the 90s, there were a lot of vacancies. And there was the term of Zwischennutzung, means like a usage in between ownership. And so we had the opportunity, or I had the opportunity to rent an enormous studio space for very little money, not for a very long time, not with the security, but to create a piece. And this was the starting of the company, basically. This was in Hackische Höfe. And like where the Camellia now is, I had the whole, if you walk through the yard, I had the whole second yard as a studio. Now it's impossible
to rent
it. And so that was the starting. And then we moved according to what there was, because we had to move out. It was the Hackschöfe was sold. We moved to the next space. We found our next studio. We put a floor in. We put the douches in. We put the toilets in. And then we had to move again because it was again sold. And at that moment we also thought, well, we might have to look into more long-term space. And at the same time, and this is again looking at what you need, I was aiming to do a piece that needed height. And most of the industrial spaces, they have a certain height, they have pillars, you're quite reduced, and I wanted to have like 2 levels. So we looked at a space that gives that, and at that moment we discovered Sophienseele, Jochen Sandig and myself. Jochen was very, very good with someone from the Wohnungsbau Genossenschaft. So how do you say it in English?
I don't know, but we can subtitle it.
And so they said, we have this incredible space, a former gathering space, actually a political space initially. And so we looked at it, and it had this incredible hall, and then it had a studio upstairs that was it could function as a studio, and then there was a space that we could use for the company as an office. So that was like somehow the ideal space, and that was also really a changing point where we said, okay, we're gonna step in, we're gonna play a repertory, and we formed like kind of a collective of artists that wanted to play a lot, and Jochen was programming. And that was the beginning of Sophienseele. There was really nothing. There was no funding, there was no money from the city. And we decided we need a space because in that time in Berlin, it didn't exist anything substantial from the independent scene. So we had to create our own space. And I mean, now you know what the theater is after this time, you know, and you can't think of Sophienseele not being there as a platform for independent theater and dance. But there was really nothing. It was an empty space. We bought our own chairs. We bought a second-hand sound system. So it was really starting from scratch. And it was really looking, because we wanted height. And from there, actually the whole process started, you know. And we and the second crucial, well, in between, I think it's an interesting step. So from the independency and I think kind of an ideal situation is Sophienseele of creating finding our own production means, even though there was always the fight for the money, for sure. So in 99, Thomas Ostermeier asked us if we want to join the artistic direction of the Schaubühne, and that was sort of the turning point to go into an institution. So there, everything was already constructed, everything was everything was kind of financed.
And how did that change your artistic work? How was it? Would you do it again?
Would I do it again? That's, I mean, looking back at it, because we decided after 5 years to leave that security. I have to say it was important, and it really brought my work forward a lot, because I had really a lot of other possibilities. It was the first time I could form an ensemble. So I had 13 permanent dancers. I had all these different ateliers, like the woodwork, the costume, metal. I mean, everything that a theater is at the disposition that we didn't have before in the independent scene. All the workshops. Plus it was the public was from like 200 now on a regular basis, about like 500. So the work changed also because the space changed. The size of the stage changed, and the public.
Was it more flexible before, and then you had this classical separation?
No, it was not about flexibility, because it was very, very flexible, and the size of the space and the theater could be changed, because it, Schaubühne is basically, if you take everything down, it's one huge, big, empty space. And we really used it in the beginning also in all the different variations, and one of the pieces was in the whole empty Schaubühne. So I wouldn't say that. I think it was more that the possibilities really gave space to other visions, to other explorations. And I spoke to another public, which I think also, we brought the people that were usually going to spoken theater to watch dance. So that was a big shift in the public. And I would say, so for 5 years, it was artistically, for me, very important. And I still keep quite some pieces from that time in my repertory. But to be in an institution, and I mean, there were a lot of different discussions, so one cannot say that it was only because it was an institution. But I think the main reason was maybe that they were not completely independent directing the structure. So we decided to become independent, to let that security go, and we left Schaubühne and we started a new own space, which was Radialsystem at the Spree, which was again an empty building that had to be completely redone. So at that point I already worked with opera, so this was a space for music and dance in a way, kind of as we were collaborating a lot with old music. It was almost like the architectural face of the old structure, and then with a new structure on top. It was almost like programmatic, so we had like Old Music Ensemble, the Academy of Old Music, as a base company there, and Sasha Waltz and Guest as contemporary dance group. So we called it a space for the arts. So really opening for new formats of music theater, because that's what we were interested in. And so again, actually starting from scratch and without funding, and we built it up for 11 years without funding, trying to formulate something that gives space for the arts, and in a multifunctional space.
Which of course has again new requirements you knew from before Schaubühne. So you are there as a choreographer, artist, director, but you are also with your team responsible for the infrastructure and everything. So it kind of it stole some, I imagine, of your time in order to organize and restructure and think about the building and everything.
Well, I think no matter if you work in a fixed structure or if you work in an independent structure, you have to put your focus in. You have to take it not for granted. That's actually why I want to speak about it. I want to speak to young artists that they create their own systems and their own structures, and they don't think that someone else would do it, or that the politicians should do it for you, but that you have to define them and you have to fight for them. I mean, it was Jochen Sandig and Volker Dude who were the founders in Radialsystem. So you have to create collectives that are working together to make it happen. You know, and I think it's very helpful if it's also within the same generation. So you don't ask someone that is like, already like maybe 30 years into the business, because they have other goals. I think you have to define what are your specific needs out of the time you're working.
And of course possibilities, because as you said before, Berlin 1990s is a different situation
completely different
from today.
Because I had the impression as you were talking, you were like going into security and then going out, like you choose to go out of security to have like new structures and new ways. And this is also something that is maybe today not so easy for young dancers to have, like going like deliberately out of a secure place like funding structure and houses to create something for themselves. It's a risk they have to take.
I think it's a risk, but I think it was a very clear decision to go into the liberty, into the artistic liberty. That was the main goal, because we wanted to go into music theater and it was not possible in that structure. So we felt confined by the structure. So, and then we actually went independently into a lot of existing structures, but only as in co-production, you know. So, because then you can also identify what you need and you can formulate it, but you're not employed, you know. And we actually went into producing operas that was for the last 10 years, so in that period. I mean, now is a turning point, like since last year I'm returning a bit more into choreographic work, so this is also what I show here. Otherwise, I think I would not be necessarily presented, because the productions include, orchestra, singers, so I was actually moving kind of away from that world a bit, and I found it also very interesting to discover these other structures, to understand them, because now as I'm asked to take the direction together with Johannes Oehmann of the Staatsballett, it's important also that I understand state structures, because otherwise I would not really function well inside. And I'm really I deeply believe that we have to move into the structures and change them also from within. So this is another try again, but I keep the company at the same time. When we moved to Schaubühne, we let go of the company. So we were at the Schaubühne, there was no Sasha Waltz and Guest anymore. And this time I keep Sasha Waltz and Guest as an independent structure, it stays, but I, as a person, as an artist, I move into the structure.
But the time when you move into structures, I can believe you are so busy you're so busy like getting to know how does it function that it's also hard being inside the process and change it in the same time. Or how is the process of looking at it, going back or going outside and then making changes, or does it come from like obstacles that you have from within, or is it like you have to step outside to do a process, a change in a structure?
Yeah, I would say everything is it's dealing with obstacles. It's solving problems. Basically, that's a permanent state. But I would say it's in art, it's not different when you create. So it's a creative process, how you change a problem into something that is actually constructive, and you know, like you change the perception and you change the parameters so that they are dealable. And I think there's not such a difference. And I feel also sometimes I'm spending now at the moment so much time with solving all these problems, you know, then rather in like now I start again in May. I start the creation. I'm looking forward to finally again be in the studio alone. You know.
But is it like in a creation process that you have to like search for the obstacles? That you like are looking at what is like an obstacle that I can work with, or is it like are they coming like naturally in your way, kind of?
Well, I think they're always. I don't know. I wouldn't call them obstacles, but every moment has a friction and has a problem inside. And actually, I think you go further. For example, I start usually creating I wouldn't call it obstacle, but when I create space, I define and I create limitations to what I want to do. I don't keep it completely that I can do anything, but I create certain limitations. And from these limitations, I start to define the work. So you can call that I create my own obstacles, even if there are none. But because anything, if anything is possible, you know, you have to focus. You have to focus and say, this is what I want to look at.
I think before we become an obstacle for your rehearsals,
maybe we can start to move back.
Actually, yeah. Thank you very much, Sasha, for the talk. I think it's very important. Also, tonight we will talk to young artists from the summit, which are also talking about working conditions. And so our last question were, do you have any recommendation for them? But you already gave it.
Yeah.
You said own your structures, create structures on your own.
Structures.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
What they do.
And also like I just spoke with students, young students finishing their studies, so not even yet in the field. And sometimes, this is talking in larger scales to start your own theaters, or you know, or even to start your own studio. But I think it's also like start wherever you are. So if the necessity for creating is big, so start in your living room. That's it. Start in your living. That's where I worked. Start in your yard. You know, like embrace the problem rather than say, I don't have the funding. I don't know what to do. You know, like I stop complaining.
Do it here.
You know.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Create
enough space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Since you have a lot of your pieces still in your repertoire, when you look back at them, can you see still those conditions of their production in those pieces? You must. How many people are involved, of course, which kind of stage design you could choose or could not choose. Is it kind of looking back at different kinds of also buildings and structures where they were produced?
Nah, I think the pieces now, they become something completely by itself, and you forget actually how you were struggling or whatever. You know, they become. But they have, like, let's say 20-8, which was the piece that I did in Hakeshöfer. You know, the colors, for example, they are influenced by the colors that were still in the East used. You know, So something in the scale of the of that is, for example, still present. I mean, when I look at it, I don't remember it, but I don't know, like Alida Kosmonauten, where I interviewed people living in Marzahn in a high-rise. There it's maybe the most prominent because we created videos from interviews and the spaces of the people that were living there, so you see them. So this is really very much like a Zeitzeugnis also. It becomes now a document because it's and it's we created on monitors, and now we have to think, is a piece still right? Because we don't get these monitors anymore. They're out of production.
Huge ones, huh?
Exactly, they're out of production.
And now flat screen.
Exactly. So what are we doing? Are we creating boxes that pretend this volume? And we are. I mean, it's also a time. We really feel there. It's a Zeitzeugnis. I don't know how we say that.
Yeah, time document.
Yeah, it's a document.
It's
a document in a way. So that I feel in some of the older pieces. Maybe with the others I'm too close.
This is very interesting. I saw your Werkschau Karlsruhe.
ZKM.
ZKM a few years ago, and I also had that feeling. It was very interesting for me to see pieces from different times kind of playing together. And yes, on the one hand I thought they are objects in itself, and their work, even in that museum-like structure, very well. But on the other hand, you could see where I had the feeling. You could see where they're coming from what time, and but in many cases you work with the same dancers, if I'm not mistaken.
A lot of times the original cast stays. I mean, I have for sure replacements. People get pregnant, and but I still keep a lot of original cast. But 22/8, for example, I have now a second cast. I mean, we try to also give further, and this is something important also. To work on repertory, to not throw the pieces, not to create something and then accept that you have 4 performances and not. Go and play the piece, convince people to show it wherever, then just rent a space somewhere and show it, because the piece needs to grow. I'm like, for me this is the biggest problem in production that I see with young artists, that they're not, that it's kind of a waste. You know, they apply, they get the money, they produce, they show 3 times, over. Then they apply again. You know, and we should go against this. This is for me complete inefficient and not sustainable.
Because there's still a lot of people who haven't seen it because it's not mass media, of course.
And the piece needs to grow, and they need to understand the piece themselves. And the dancers need to understand the piece.
The pieces are, I believe that the pieces are more clever than the makers or the producers of the pieces.
Yeah, somehow.
So somehow.
It becomes, I would not say it's clever, but it has its own life.
It has its own life.
You know, it has its own life, and the image for me is like when a piece has a premiere, it's born. It's like it's a newborn
baby,
and then it needs to grow, and then like Körper, for example, is like 18. You know, it's fine. It can go its way now.
But do you believe there would be a time where you would say, no, this piece needs to rest, like it has to.
I do it. I mean, I don't have all the 40 pieces constantly in repertoire. I bring them up, and I do them in different pieces. It's just too much work because it's a lot of carrying and rehearsing. You just can't do so much.
So this is the point in our walk where you go back to rehearsal stage actually, and we take care of our camera woman that she will stay like, please stop, here's the street. Thank you very much, Sasha, for the talk. It's very inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.